minutes. Welcome to the show. A big hand for Dominic and the Lucid for opening for us, please. Please. I just wanted you all to know I came up here with the full intentions of playing a set of original music. But then I have a Google phone. Raise your hand if you got the Google phone. The Google phone told me a couple of things today. One of them was that Epstein from Welcome Back Kotter died today. So let's hear for the Sweat Hogs. I was fully going to do a song of original Tony Chexmix material, but then I heard that my great friend, and you will be the last to hear this because my Google phone just told me this moments before I arrived on the stage. Thank you, Dimple. We lost a great recording artist today. Mr. Kenny Rogers passed, or as I like to call him, Kenneth Rogers. He was found face down in a bucket of fried chicken, his own fried chicken. Death by asphyxiation from chicken grease and complications from his last facial plastic surgery. And as he was such a great friend of mine, I thought we would honor him tonight with a few songs by Mr. Kenneth Rogers.
On a warm summer's evening, on a train bound for nowhere, I met up with a gambler. We were both too tired to sleep, so we took turns of staring out the window in the darkness till boredom overtook us, and he began to speak. He said, "Son, I've made a life out of reading people's faces and knowing what their cards were by the way they held their eyes. And if you don't mind me saying, I can see you're out of aces. For a taste of your whiskey, I'll give you some advice." So I handed him a bottle, and he drank down my last swallow. And then he bummed a cigarette and asked me for a light. And then the night got deathly quiet, and his face lost all expression. He said, "If you're gonna play the game, boy, you got to learn to play it right. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the deal is done." Well, every gambler knows that the secret to surviving is knowing what to throw away and knowing what to keep. 'Cause every hand's a winner and every hand's a loser, and the best that you can hope for is to die in your sleep. And when he'd finished speaking, he turned back toward the window, crushed out his cigarette, folded off to sleep. And somewhere in the evening, the breaker he broke even. The last words that he spoke, I found an ace that I could keep. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the deal. Everybody, you got to know when to hold 'em, when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the deal is done. You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never sell your pizza until you know that you have sliced them. There'll be time enough for slicing. When the deal is done, you got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money, sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting. When the deal is done, there'll be time enough for counting. When the deal is done, there'll be time enough for counting. When the deal is done. I have to take a moment to tell a true story about my friend Kenny, or I'd like to call him Kenneth Rogers. Some of you may or may not know, he's an entrepreneur. He started a very, very successful fried chicken franchise. And when he did so, he commissioned a portrait painter. This is a true story. Commissioned a portrait painter to paint his portrait. And it was to be a life-size portrait to hang in the lobby of the corporate office. And he made one suggestion to this portrait painter. He said, make sure I appear to be heavily endowed. Heavily endowed in the portrait. So the portrait painter, who was not sure how to go with this, painted the portrait of Kenny Rogers. This is a true story, by the way. And Kenny went and looked at the portrait after draft one and said, no, gotta be bigger. I need more junk. So the portrait painter said, okay, I'll give it another try, and did some special effects in 3D makeup, whatever portrait painters do, and gave Kenny Rogers a huge nutsack in Kenny Rogers Portrait 2.0. Kenny saw the portrait and said, no, my nuts still aren't big enough. So the portrait painter gave it another shot, and at this point it was getting time, it was like the deadline, so it had to be put up in the lobby of the corporate office for Kenny Rogers Chicken franchise. This is absolutely true. And they pulled back the blanket of the portrait, and everybody that was there for the ceremony went, oh my God, look at Kenny's nuts, they're huge. And it was pretty disturbing, as it is now. I can see it in all your faces. And the CEOs let the portrait hang for 2 days before one of them finally went up to Kenny and said, hey, Kenneth, perhaps your nuts are too huge in this portrait. Could we perhaps return it to the portrait painter and have them reduce your ball sack? And it was done. And the portrait stands to this day in the lobby of Kenny Rogers' fried chicken franchise office. But let me assure you, I was a longtime friend of Kenneth, and he does have a huge ball sack. And it was because of his huge ball sack that he was able to seduce many women away from their men. And this is a song about how one time he managed to do that. This is a song called Lucid.
In a bar in Toledo, across from the depot, on a bar stool she took off her ring. I thought I'd get closer, so I walked on over. I sat down and asked her name. When the drinks finally hit her, she said, I'm no quitter, but I finally quit living on dreams. I'm hungry for laughter, and here ever after, I'm after whatever the other life brings. In the mirror I saw him, and I closely watched him. I thought how he looked out of place. Then he came over to the woman who sat beside me. He had a strange look on his face. His big hands were calloused. He looked like a mountain. In a minute I thought I'd be dead. But he started shaking his big heart was breaking. He turned to the woman and said, "You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucid, with 4 hungry children and a crop in the field. I've had some bad times, lived through some sad times, but this time your hurting won't heal. You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucid." Well, after he left us, I ordered more whiskey. I thought how she'd made him look small. Big ton of healing, something to whiskey, something and all that and all. She was a beauty, but when she came to me, she must have thought I'd lost my mind. 'Cause I couldn't hold her, 'cause the words that he told her kept running around in my mind. You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucid, with 4 hungry children and a crop in the field. I've had some bad times, been through some sad times, but this time your hurting won't heal. You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucid. Kevin Lynch, everybody. Children in a crowd in the field. I've had some bad times, lived through some sad times, but this time you heard it won't heal. It's a fine time to leave me, Lucid. Fine time to leave me, Lucid.
Thank you, this song by Kenny Rogers. And just the late, great Kenneth Rogers. We just got one more song. And I'd like to introduce my friend, Dolly.